Regional aviation has a chronic problem. It's always about to take off. So globally, this segment has been slower to recover than mainstream aviation. Case in point, ATR, the world's only major turboprop manufacturer. It has recovered fast in the last 2 years, but is yet to touch its pre-COVID business. Also, while demand is bouncing back, global supply constraints make it impossible for production to keep up. In India, regional aviation has survived primarily as a chunk of a full-service pan-Indian carrier's operations, Indigo or Air India, and for a while, SpiceJet. Standalone regional airlines haven't survived for too long. For the last 2 years, a couple of airlines have been rewriting the story and proving the business model. One of them is Fly91. The Goa-based regional carrier operates 6 aircraft across 12 destinations, running 280 weekly flights. It has, in fact, surprisingly well-occupied flights to places like Jalgaon, Agatti and Sindhudurg, and a passenger mix that has surprised even the airline. In this episode, my colleague, ET's aviation journalist Forum Gandhi and I speak to its MD Manoj Chacko and Alexis Vidal, the Chief Commercial Officer of ATR. Listen on, it's Friday, the 26th of June. I'm Anirban Chowdhury. This is the Morning Brief. Hi, Alexis, Manoj. Very warm welcome to the Morning Brief.
Hi. Hi, hello.
So let's start with you, Alexis. Give my listener an idea of the landscape, basically. How is regional aviation right now across the world? Which are the upcoming markets? Which are the markets you think that are not doing too well? What are the interesting trends that you see?
Okay, so we are the world leader in regional aviation manufacturing. So we are exposed to basically 100 of countries where our aircraft operates. The strongest regions for ATR are Asia Pacific. That's about 40% of our deliveries and backlog typically. And we see a lot of growth in Asia Pacific in different countries with different dynamics, mostly because of the growing population and the growing need for air travel.
Tell me something, post-pandemic, when there was fairly significant hit to your business, basically. From my understanding, bigger aircraft manufacturers like Airbus and Boeing have recovered slightly faster than the smaller ones. Is that true? And is it true that, revenue-wise and in terms of order backlog, you're yet to sort of reach pre-COVID levels of 2019?
So there are different things. One is the market itself. It has been diverse. Take an example. Indonesia is our largest market for ATR in terms of installed fleet in service with about 100 aircraft. But the Indonesian market has not been recovering well ever since COVID for a variety of reasons. However, there are other jurisdictions like India where the demand is growing and we will expect to add more aircraft into the market, like just Fly91 did earlier this year. As for ATR, we have been outselling our production. So we are in a strong market momentum where we sell about 50 to 60 aircraft per year, and we produce about 40 aircraft. So the demand is quite strong. To your point, what has constrained us so far is more the supply chain and the ability for us to ramp up production. We are ramping up production. I wish we would ramp up even faster so we can address more markets.
So what's your global order backlog right now?
So we have about 170 aircraft in backlog. So that spreads over several years, especially with a production rate of 40 per year. But we want to climb back to the pre-COVID levels.
Which was?
Our peak was 80, but just before COVID, we were about 60 aircraft delivered per year. And that's our target for later in this decade.
But when you say about 175, what does that compare to when it was to 2019?
Actually, that's quite strong because 2019 must have been about 100 to 30, 100. So we are having an increased backlog just because in the last 3 years, we outsold more than we produced, right? We outsold our production. And it's a very good situation to be into as a manufacturer. it's a good problem to have to sell more than you produce, but then we have to increase production.
Bringing the question closer home, in India, your research report says that you see a lot of demand in tier 2 and tier 3 markets. Can you give us an idea of your current order book in India and what is the kind of demand that you see over the next few years?
For sure. So, we've been in India for over 25 years. Today, we have 70 airplanes flying day in, day out, 6 of which with Fly91. And we expect that market to continue to grow as a result of sales or even taking aircraft on lease. Talking about the longer term future, we see a very strong growing demand for regional aviation in India. If I take one example, we've been doing quite a lot of research on the mobility patterns of India between cities. We call that intercity trips. And we find out that there are about 4 billion plus intercity trips per year in India, but only 3% of which are conducted by air travel versus ground travel for 97% of them. And that tells us there is a very significant opportunity to convert and switch mode from ground to air. Because if you compare that with other markets in the world that are maybe more mature in terms of aviation, they are about 8 to 9% of air share for intercity trips. So we believe even with the current demand of mobility, there will be an opportunity to double or treble the fleet in India for ATR.
So out of the deliveries that you have slated for every year, how many are we expecting for India in this fiscal and the next fiscal?
So I can't be as granular because it also depends on, as an example, we have lessors or leasing companies having positions that may or may not lease them out to Indian parties. But what I can say more globally is we have a market forecast that would show there is a conservative demand of about 10 aircraft per year delivering to India consistently in the next 20 years.
So are you expecting fresh orders this year?
Oh, I believe we can, yes.
So Manoj, coming to you, this whole demand thing, Fly91 is an interesting example. You started out with city pairs where, you would have probably thought that you would get a lot of leisure traffic, but you ended up getting a lot of small business consumers as well. For instance, even to a place like Agati in Lakshadweep, you get a lot of islanders and small business people, of course, in addition to tourists. Now, how different is the profile compared to what you first thought, and how has that changed your business plans?
So that's a very interesting question that you ask, because primarily I think in India there's very strong VFR traffic. What we also have noticed is that when you go into tier 2 and tier 3 cities, there's a lot of business traffic, not the classical corporate traffic that you see on the inter-metro routes, but you find the small businessmen, you find professionals, lawyers, doctors, all of them moving. And we've seen this trend consistently, whether, for example, it is Jalgaon, where we operate, whether it's Agati, where again, a lot of the islanders have started using us because we've been a very reliable provider of air connectivity. Even a place like Sindhudurg, for example, it attracts leisure travelers at one end, people who are trying to, look at new holiday destinations. But we've also seen a lot of people from the Konkan belt actually using Sindhudurg as a gateway to get into major cities like Pune and Hyderabad. Okay, so I think the profile that we were looking at the start of the journey to where we are today, yes, there is a change in the profile, very clearly. But I think what is also interesting to note, Indians pay per trip. Indians don't pay for distance. Okay, so in our country, we are mentally tuned to pay for a trip. So whether I go from Bombay to Goa, Bombay to Cochin, Bombay to, Guwahati, there is a mental number in our head, which is between 4,000 to 6,000 rupees. And that works beautifully in the regional segment, especially the turboprop segment that we fly in, which is the classical 8 hours to 12 hours by train or road. Okay, so I think these are some of our learnings, which actually works very well for the profile of customers that we work.
So do you have a split, business to leisure?
So I would say that typically, if I look at sectors like Agati, if I look at sectors like Goa, possibly it's a 50-50 mix. Okay, 50% are pure leisure. The rest of it could be anything from conferences, incentives, VFR, But then if I go into segments like, let's take Jalgaon, for example, or a sector like Goa-Pune, a Goa-Pune sector is largely business travel. Okay, you don't have, leisure per se. Same thing with the moment you get into a place like, let's say, Hyderabad, Jalgaon, or now we just opened 3 new sectors. We started Rajahmundry, Hyderabad. We go 3 times a day. Vijayawada, Hyderabad, 3 times a day. The profile of customers is largely business, district capitals to state capital. Same thing when we started Hubli. We started Hubli connecting both Bangalore and Hyderabad. Again, the profile is very different. It is quite a lot of people actually traveling on work. And I think that's the difference that we're beginning to see.
But Manoj, with India rapidly moving towards upgraded Vande Bharat trains for short-haul destinations, do you worry that speed and time difference that you are banking on will get reduced and that will be a competition for regional carriers?
No. So I think I'm a firm believer that as rail and road improves, it naturally stimulates air travel. Okay, and we have a lot of examples, it's a lot of examples globally as well as India. I think a classic example that I always mention to people is Shanghai to Beijing. Okay, there are over 100 bullet trains. Literally every 10 minutes is a bullet train that does that ride between Beijing and Shanghai. Okay, in about 4.5 hours. You still have about 70 flights that go between Beijing and Shanghai. Okay, or if you take Paris to London, you have the Eurostar that kind of does that trip in less than 3 hours, but you still have about 20 or 25 flights a day between London and Paris. We've also seen that in India. India, if you look at sectors, when you go to Jaipur, when you go Bangalore, Chennai. Okay, Bangalore, Chennai, the distance is getting closer and closer and closer. Okay, but you still have enough people that want to fly. Like, people still want a Bombay-Pune flight. A business traveler at the end of the day wants to catch an international flight. He doesn't want to take the 3 hours or 2.5 hour road ride. He still wants to get on a plane. So if you ask me, road travel, rate travel, the better it improves, it is good for air travel, stimulating. So I think Vande Bharat, the bullet train coming in, all of those things are actually good for air travel.
So as a regional carrier, you have to be very flexible and nimble-footed. But in your case, you had mentioned in an interview that you had to keep going back to your drawing board, especially in the case of Navi Mumbai, where you were told that, don't even ask for slots. This was 6 months ago. Has that situation changed now?
Oh, that is completely changed now. It's completely changed. So I think now it is, can you come in and operate as many flights as you can? Okay, so yes, we would love to get into places like Navi Mumbai for sure. I think the airports have also realized that you can't keep regional aviation out because there is this perceived preconception that regional aircrafts are slower. They block up the runway, they block up the airspace. And, we've spent a lot of time explaining to the airports, which they've understood right now, that we can come in much faster and get out much faster and not block infrastructure. Yes, Bombay is still a constraint. BOM is still a constraint. But Navi Mumbai, there's no constraint right now for us to go in.
So how many and which routes are you going to be starting from Navi Mumbai, assuming that you are in advanced stage conversations with the operator?
Yes, so we are going to be launching Sindhudurg flights from Navi Mumbai. And obviously, to operate that flight, we will have to come in from Goa. So clearly, we're going to be doing Navi Mumbai Goa. We'll be doing Navi Mumbai Sindhudurg. Okay, these are 2 of the sectors that we already have on our anvil right now. We today operate 21 flights a week into Jalgaon. So we know people from Jalgaon want to come to Bombay. So we're exploring that. We fly into Sholapur. We're exploring whether there's a possibility to kind of go in from Navi Mumbai to Sholapur. There are a bunch of other destinations that we are opening up in and around. Possibly some of the destinations in Gujarat that will come into our radar soon. But specifically right now, if you ask me in the next few months, we are starting Navi Mumbai, but it's going to be to Goa and it's going to be to Sindhudurg.
Obviously, you have to think of airport costs also, and there are very few metros that you fly to, and they're very strategic. So, of course, Navi Mumbai gives you the catchment area of Sindhudurg, etc. But costs, are they sort of taking into account that you are a regional airline and you need not be charged as much as...
No, nothing like that. We started our airline out of possibly the most expensive airport in India, which is Mopa. Okay, in fact, Mopa is the only airport where you also pay arrival charges for passengers, correct? But why did we go to Mopa? We went to Mopa because we could grow in an unconstrained fashion. Okay, compared to Dabolim, where there were, no TAMs and there's military movement and all that kind of stuff. For a startup airline, we felt that being in an unconstrained environment helps you. So yes, at a unit level, sometimes it can be more expensive. But when you look at the larger picture, strategically you look at the larger picture, there is merit in it is okay because you then need to make it up somewhere else. Okay. But again, you can't be overly casual about how you kind of look at it. Now, Bombay, we know for a fact that there is a large catchment area. In fact, you can't ignore the Navi Mumbai, Thane, that entire catchment area that's there. So it's a beautiful catchment area, correct? So we know that it is worth going in over there. But let's say, for example, if you go up north, okay, if I had a choice to go between, let's say, Hindon and Noida, I'd possibly any day go into Hindon. Okay, because you have the entire Ghaziabad catchment area and the pricing difference is very, very different and you want to get into UP and stuff like that. So I think it all depends on how you want to build your network. Your network has got to come ahead of everything else because if you build the right network with the right kind of rotations, you're then looking at things from a long-term perspective.
So the last time we had spoken, you had mentioned that your aircraft utilization was about 13 hours. Now with the new routes that you're planning, does this fit into your plan or you'll have to expand your fleet size?
Of course, we need a lot more aircraft from ATR. Currently, I think we are already maximizing the use of the aircraft. I mean, so typically the birds are up in the air for 8 flights. We are trying to push a few red-eye flights, which obviously is very important to kind of, build up utilization. But yes, we are adding fleet. We just added 2 more aircrafts into the fleet. So we are looking at capacity addition because that's the only way in which you will grow. So yes, we have to add aircrafts. And, so we got a great partner in ATR who is, here to support us on our plan.
And ATR is saying that it expects more orders this year. So I'm just putting 2 and 2 together here. Okay, so Alexis, coming back to you again, traditionally Airbus has set up final assembly lines for C295 and H125 in India. But now there are reports which say that ATR is also going to be next in line. So I just want to understand that for it to make sense for strategically in terms of return of investment for the company, it has to be a fairly large order book because it is also a fairly large investment, right?
Oh, that is. But I think whilst I cannot speak on behalf of my main shareholder, clearly we've been in India for 25 years. With that, we've been developing an ecosystem of thousands of qualified pilots, qualified engineers, cabin crews, but also administrative staff. So we've been here for a long time, and clearly we will do more in India.
Okay.
Partnering further on whether training, maintenance, or industry, as you mentioned, that requires a strategic alignment between policymakers to support the development of regional airlines and connectivity, and of us finding the right economical value. So I don't have a magic threshold or number, but what I can tell you is, yes, we will be doing more in India with the advent of more aircraft coming into country.
Sure. I mean, for the company to be able to say that, globally we will send out these many aircraft from India, is it purely dependent on an annual order from India, or will these aircraft be utilized in other countries as well, or fulfilling orders for other countries as well?
Well, I think we are not yet there because I didn't say we will implement. I say we will increase our cooperation in India because of the market prospects we have. I think, again, the nature of the cooperation will ultimately depend, to answer your question, on Indian market. That's very clear to us.
Sure. So one major problem in regional aviation in India has always been of the fact that there is a bottleneck in type rating and training costs for pilots. Also want to build a strong ecosystem since we spoke last time. Are we also dedicatedly looking at investing in training academies in India? Are we looking for such opportunities where you can train as well?
Yes, I think globally, if you think that this is a market where we can go from the 70-ish aircraft we have in service today to 200, as an example, yes, it will command, increasing the capacity in country, in India, for training, but also for maintenance. So clearly there will be requirements, and we will have the willingness to develop the capacity with our partner companies. And
Okay, so Manoj, give me an understanding of what FY27 looks like for the airline.
So FY27, if you ask us, is actually the year when we start our serious scale up. So we expect our top line to more than double. That's what we're looking at this point of time. Currently, we do 12 destinations with 6 aircrafts and on an average 280 weekly flights. Last year, we had an average of 2.7 aircrafts in a year, in the fleet. So this year, the average is going to be above 6 because we already have 6 that are in the fleet. And we expect to add potentially about 5 more aircrafts before the end of this financial year. So our average is going to be more towards the 7.5. At this point of time, we believe that we would have at least another 5 more new destinations that we will be setting up. So 12 is expected to go to maybe 17, could be 18 as well. But the idea is really to kind of build up. So as we start new destinations, we will start with some of those philosophies, as opposed to when we started in the beginning, it was more Udan sectors and, more sectors that we had to fly as part of the scheme. Like today, out of my 298 flights, 280 flights, only 98 are actually Udan. So you can expect to see a couple of more stations coming up. For example, we just got our clearances to fly into Tirupati. Indore is another place we are focused on. We are going to be opening Mangalore as a station shortly. So these are all the stations that are currently on the planned list and, for us to start flying into during this financial year.
Sorry, pardon my ignorance, but why has this shift happened? I mean, lesser Udan and more.
No, so it has stayed stable. So the Udan sectors have stayed stable. Okay, so we had 14 daily flights on Udan. That's 7 sectors or 7 city pairs is what we had. And we are waiting for the new Udan bidding to come in. But, you can't actually just build a business model on Udan. So Fly91 is there to support Udan and to work. We work with Udan, but we are not an Udan-only airline.
But that is a comment on Udan, isn't it? I mean, the fact that it's clearly lagging the demand, the regional demand. If airlines are expanding beyond what Udan gives you, then it should have expanded faster, right? The whole framework.
Yes and no, actually. I think if I look at the Udan scheme, it's a really good scheme. I think it's how airlines have to leverage it. Like as an example, we started Goa Lakshadweep. Okay, but once we started stabilizing Lakshadweep, we realized that there are other destinations you can go from Lakshadweep without actually needing Udan support. I would say Udan is a fantastic framework to bring airlines into a particular city, but then it is how the airline makes the best use of that opportunity to actually capture that city and then build a network out of the city. So that is in the airline's hand. That's not in the government's hand. Okay, because the day you bring in 3 flights into a city, you are no longer an underserved airport. Correct. So I think that's the way any airline should look at it.
Tell me, from purely the cost management point of view, how has the economics of running a regional airline changed in the last few years?
I think the moment you build an airline like what we've done in Fly91, which is a pure play regional airline, you actually eliminate a lot of legacy costs. So we are able to create a very efficient cost structure. Number 2 is we questioned every single activity that you do in an airline to say, do we really need to do it? Like, and I think I've said this before, we're the only airline in the world which has eliminated check-in as a process. You buy a ticket, you get a boarding card, you walk to the airport and board. Okay, so for example, that means that I don't even need to give connectivity into a check-in kiosk in an airport. Okay, because the process is already done. I don't need to use aero bridges. Okay, I can actually turn around a plane actually in 25 minutes without any stress, without any drama. So I think these are things that have played a very big part for us, which is more around cost leadership, more around asset utilization. One of the things that we've actually differentiated very much compared to other airlines is because we are a pure turboprop fleet. My cost of fuel to revenue is just 22%. Okay, whereas a regular airline, it's anywhere between 38 to 40%. Okay, and somebody who's got a mixed fleet, it's about 32. Okay, so when you come into situations like what we have come in right now, with the fuel costs going up and all that stuff, my maximum exposure has jumped from 22 to 30, whereas the rest of the industry have actually gone up almost to 50%. So being a pure play regional airline with the kind of equipment we use, with the kind of turns that we do, we are still able to maintain the level of efficiency that we want. And I think that's really what we have learned in the last 2 years plus of operations at Fly91, that you can really run a smart, efficient operation, using regional aircraft.
But having a business customer, does that give you more room for yields to increase prices more,
Yes.
premium ticketing, etc.?
Yes, it does. I mean, I think customers have begun to realize the value when you fly on an aircraft like ours. There are sectors where we compete with other airlines. Like I think a very good sector I can talk about is a sector like Goa, Pune. Okay, we compete with the Airbuses, we compete with the 737s. Okay, but customers have actually started gravitating towards us, and we can see that in the form of yields. And what is making the difference is they're actually finding elapsed times better. And that translates into a certain degree of premiumness, especially in terms of yield. So I would say that, yeah, it's a valid point for us.
Got it. Okay, he spoke about leather seats. So just one more question to you. As the profile of the short city pair customer sort of evolves, you have more businessmen coming in, people who are willing to pay more. There will come a time very soon when they want some kind of a premiumness in the product as well. Now, as someone who's traveled an ATR for very long, I belong to the Northeast, and Alliance Air has been operating a lot of ATRs. I've been flying them since I was a kid. Is the 45% fuel efficiency the only mode that ATR primarily still has? Or is there some kind of a premiumness also that we'll see later, in which your big competition is Embraer that way? So, I mean...
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there are many things. So other than the fuel efficiency credentials, of course, we have a performance capability of the aircraft to access, shorter airports, to turn around faster, as Manoj was saying, which are incredible, positive points for an airline to operate ATR. But as you talk about passenger experience and cabin, yes, we see a premiumization of the market in some areas, maybe not all. India, not yet, as an example. But what we have launched a bit less than 3 years ago in ATR was what we call the Highline Cabin Collection, whereby we are delivering nowadays. One was for Berjaya's Berjaya Air in Malaysia, premium cabins. So they go, instead of 2 by 2 with economy seats, they go 1 by 1 seats with a much wider, we call it all business class configuration. So you will see more in the coming months about how many cabins and cabin concepts we are actually not just designing, but selling and delivering.
Okay, so last question to you, Manoj. How will you fund the expansion plans that you have? You've already raised 200 to 250 crore from Convergent. Now, are you raising a Series B? If yes, how much are you planning to raise?
I think for whatever expansion that we are planning for this fiscal, there's clearly no need of any additional capital infusion required. But as we start looking towards the long term, as we start looking towards where we want to get and how we want to kind of look at, the overall growth plan that we need to have, at the appropriate time, we will possibly, as needed, we will try and access funding. But at this point of time, no. But as we start firming up plans, depending on the requirement, we'll potentially, so that's where we are on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The demand is real. The routes are filling up. Whether aircraft supply, airport infrastructure, and policy can keep pace is the question that remains. That's it for today. You were listening to this episode on The Morning Brief. It was produced by Vinay Joshi and Radhas Naik. Sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee. Keep listening to The Morning Brief and our other shows, including Corner Office Conversation, wherever you get your podcast. Stay tuned.